Michigan is up next. The Michigan Wolverines had college football's #1 defense last year. The problem is they lose nearly half of their production from 2023. And ultimately, with Iowa returning as much as they do, Florida State, Georgia, and then some other teams on this list returning what they do, Michigan could easily fall behind. 24/7 Sports projected them to be the #1 defense in all of college football entering 2024, but many others say it's going to be Ohio State or Iowa. And it's really those two, particularly Ohio State, who's ahead of Michigan. But here's why Michigan can still have the #1 defense, one of the best in college football, even with all they replace, both staff-wise and roster-wise. Their defensive line, with Josiah Stewart and Derek Moore on the edge, with Kenneth Grant and Mason Graham on the interior, might be the best in college football. Not just in terms of starting 4, but even the 2 deep. So in that case, the rotational 8. Rayshawn Benny is one of the better defensive tackles in the Big Ten, and he's a 3rd stringer. Noetta is a player who could be in the rotation and make a big impact, and defensive end is thinner, but Josiah Stewart and Derek Moore were very productive last year, and Michigan has recruited well on their defensive front. And Ernest Hausman, an incoming transfer from Maryland, Jashawn Barham, they make up a great linebacker duo, replacing the outgoing Michael Barrett and Junior Colson, who both left for NFL aspirations, and I wish them well there. Michigan was #1 in offensive points per game allowed, only allowing 10.5. They were #1 in opponent points per play, allowing 0.173 points per play. They were #1 in yards per game allowed, only allowing 247.1. They were 4th in opponent yards per play, 4.1. They were top 20 in takeaways per game. They on average forced 2 turnovers per game. And of that defense, they bring back 53% of their production. And Kenneth Grant, Mason Graham, Derek Moore, and Josiah Stewart were at the minimum rotational players last year. Mason Graham was a starter. Hausman was a rotational player. Barham is an incoming transfer and starter for Maryland. Makari Page was a starting safety at Michigan last year, strong safety. Quentin Johnson was a rotational free safety. Will Johnson was the starting cornerback at Michigan, the best cornerback on the team, the anchor of that secondary. He's back. The bigger questions for Michigan are really Jair Hill at left cornerback opposite of Will Johnson. He's a redshirt freshman. And Jaden McBurrows, who's been with the program for a while, is projected to start at nickelback, but he couldn't win the starting cornerback job last year. They had to bring in Josh Wallace from UMass, who was great for Michigan last year, but we'll have to see if they can step up in the secondary. Michigan will be strong at defending the run. Last year, they only allowed 90.1 yards per game on the ground, only allowing 3.0 yards per opponent carry on about an average of 30 attempts per game. The weakness of this team really is the experience and depth. They lost a ton, a lot. They even lost some guys to the portal in the secondary and at linebacker. They did. The defensive line is the strength and will be the anchor of this defense. The secondary, there's some questions, and linebacker isn't as strong as the defensive line. If there was an area outside of experience and production that I'd say is maybe a question for this team, it's the secondary. That is with Quentin Johnson, Makari Page, Will Johnson, incoming transfer Wesley Walker, Amir Hall. The secondary is deep. And like I said, Michigan is strong at every position, just like every defense we're talking about, but that is a point of weakness for this defense. It's an area that could be weaker and likely will be compared to linebacker and is definitely weaker than the defensive line. The best players on this team are Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, Josiah Stewart, all on the defensive line, and cornerback Will Johnson. Grant, Graham, and Johnson are all projected to be first-round picks for the 2025 NFL Draft. Graham had 7.5 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, and a forced fumble. Kenneth Grant had 5 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks, and 4 passes defended. Will Johnson had 27 total tackles, a tackle for loss, 4 picks, and 4 interceptions, including 1 returned for 6. Michigan's defense will probably be more aggressive with Wink Martindale as their defensive coordinator now. They will blitz more, they will send more pressure looks, but overall it will be a similar defense schematically to what Mike McDonald and Jesse Minner had going on at Michigan, that Ravens-style defense, who Martindale was the architect of. So Michigan, for sure, even losing what they do, not just on the roster, but especially their coaches. They lost Chris Partridge, who was fired in the middle of last year due to not complying with NCAA rules and investigations. He's replaced by Brian Jean Marie. At defensive back, they lost Steve Klinkscale, who followed Jim Harbaugh, and they replaced him with Lamar Morgan from Louisiana. On the defensive line, they replaced Mike Elston, who again followed Jim Harbaugh, originally with Greg Scruggs. Then the driving and alcohol incident happened. I forget if it was operating under the influence or driving under the influence, because that's two different terminologies, but something happened there. And then Michigan brought in Lou Esposito from West Virginia last year, and he was briefly at Memphis this preseason. That's a lot of change that's happened. But overall, with the scheme being similar and the amount of studs on this defense, it's up there. Thank you for watching this cut of Touchdown Talk. Remember to like the video to help this channel get into the algorithm and grow as we approach the 2024 season. And also subscribe to the channel and click the notification bell so that you can participate in our giveaway at 20,000 subscribers. Help us to grow, join this awesome community, and also be notified when we release new content here on College Football with Sam. I would like to thank my Patreon members for sponsoring this video and channel. A shout out to Crash2488 and Brasco Rascal for being $25 a month Heisman members. A shout out to $10 a month American members, all American members, Chris Lane, Connor Little OH, and Ismar. And a shout out to $5 all conference members, John Lynn, Roaming Gnome, Matthew Sale, Austin Christmas, and Janisha Cockrell. Have a great day, guys, and we will see you soon. Bye.